Good afternoon, LEC community. My name is Edgar Palacios, and I am the founder of the Latinx Education Collaborative. I'm here with my colleague and deputy director, Susana Lizarras. Susana, how are you doing today?
Hey, Edgar, I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing great. I am so excited to be here today to talk about all of our success in 2022. And so today we're just going to be talking a little bit about our 2022 annual report. Susana, if you were to talk about what we did in 2022, how would you describe it?
2022 was a transition year for us.
Mm.
I think it was a transition year for education, as education and schools were coming out of the very deep COVID stage of online learning, hybrid learning. 2022 became the kind of the aftermath, right? Or the transition of the COVID into what was our new, and people are saying our new normal, right? Being back in person a little bit, being back in schools. For that little while, we were out of schools for a long time. So last year, I think to encompass it would just be our comeback year.
I think it was a really interesting year for a lot of different reasons, but one of my favorite things about what happened in 2022 is that we were able to grow our team. We were able to grow our ability to create impact in our community. And one of the things that's actually a result of that is us trying new things. And so you're seeing us experimenting with doing, I think, more professional types of live streams, more professional types of online events. And so this is kind of one of those pilots that we're doing that's a direct result of what we did in 2022. And so I'm going to shift, just going to show a couple of different slides that are from our 2022 annual report. I think on the screen you'll see the link scrolling by. So we welcome you. We invite you to take a look to see about all the good work that we did in 2022. And this slide right here really encapsulates the amount of work that we did with educators. It's talking about the 777 educators that we connected with in 2022, and then roughly over 3,000 students that we spoke to. Is that correct, Susanna?
Educators.
Sorry, excuse me, educators. Of course, we think about students as well as part of our work, so I apologize for that, but absolutely. Can you tell us a little bit more, Susanna, about the work that we did?
So I'll actually give you the differentiation there. Like I said, because it was almost that comeback year, we're now in a very hybrid world, right? So this is a perfect example of that, where instead of holding maybe a press conference or having folks together in one space in person, we've learned how to use recording devices, live stream devices, things like that through the COVID. But now we can be in the same space together, right? So you can see some of that through our data. That 777 shows you the folks that came to our events in person or had one-on-one conversations with us. So either we're being coached, advised by one of our team members. Sometimes our educators just want to talk, chat, vent in a lot of instances. And so we were able to do that with 777 educators. And then that 3,561 educators were reached through our online platform, right? So either they engaged with us through one of our live streams or through some of our virtual programming. So we were really intentional about ensuring that we captured that hybrid life that we had moved into, because at COVID world, we had a lot of those virtual numbers, right? How many folks were watching our live streams and things like that. But 2022 really was the hybrid birth of the LEC.
Yeah, it's really interesting to be able to share our resources both in a physical format and in the virtual format. And I'm going to crack up here because we lost our annual report here that we're working from. That's what happens when you're doing this live or semi-live. You'll never know. Yeah. Moving on to the next slide. I think one of the cool things that we do is that we think about encouraging middle school, high school students about becoming teachers. And so one thing that we're tracking is the level of interest, right? And so I think one thing that we've learned is that typically when you're a sixth grader, seventh grader, you may not be thinking about the career path just yet. And we think that that's a prime opportunity for us to start planting the seed and encouraging young people to consider education as a viable career option. And so, Susanna, tell us a little bit more about what we've learned with students.
Yeah, no, I'm actually really proud of this number. We spoke to over 1,400 students last year. I was out at schools, like I said, in a very hybrid way. So there were times when we were in schools virtually. Virtual career fairs have become a thing. And so I was either there virtually or in person. And we spoke to over 1,400 students, which is really, really cool. Also, to note, we do pre and post surveys with all the students that we talk to, right? We want to know how much of an impact are we having on their decision to become an educator or not. So on average, the average students answered that they, on a scale of 1 to 5, would about a number 2, they answered about a number 2 of how willing or how likely it would be that they would become educators in the future. After having a conversation with us, giving them a different perspective, and keep in mind these presentations are all different depending on the age group, depending on the amount of time we have with them. But on average, afterwards, they answered at 2.6. I would love for that number to be 5, but that 2.6 does show that just having those conversations with students about a different perspective about why to consider teaching, why to consider becoming an educator really is making a difference. So I'm really proud of both of those numbers.
Yeah, and I think when you take a look at a percentage of that, that's actually a 30% increase in interest, which I think is a really powerful number to talk about, right? Particularly in a world where we're seeing the profession go through some really significant changes. We understand that, and we're thoughtful about that, but it's also important for us to think about the next generation of educators and how we're supporting them on their quest to becoming a Latinx educator. I think one of the things that I'm really proud of from last year is that we launched our Futuros program, right, in alignment with thinking about what the pathways are into the field of education. And so our goal is to have 50 new certified Latinx educators into the Kansas City area by 2027. And then something that's not going to be included in our annual report, but we're going to celebrate this year is that our first 5 are actually as are here. And so I think in the next couple of months, we'll be doing a pinning ceremony to celebrate the first 5 educators as to that number. That's actually right on target and right on track with what we're planning. And so I'm really excited that that is happening. And that's thanks to the work of Dr. Uciel Pesina, who serves as our vice president of pipeline programs. And he was a new hire last year as well.
Yeah, well, Edgar, you're totally right. Earlier, you had mentioned kind of growing our team last year. And one of the things that I knew was going to be really important in our work moving forward were some of those supports. So let's say we had talked to a student, a high school student that's like, absolutely, I want to kind of latch on to the LEC and their mission, and I want to get certified to teach. We, in the past, hadn't necessarily been at the capacity to be able to support with that, just literally from number of people, right? And so, but none other than the Dr. Pacina, who has lots of years of experience with certification, with DESE. And so it was really exciting to have him join the team. Now, you mentioned that pinning ceremony. There's a lot of surprises coming with that, but you may or may not want to put July 18th onto your calendar. We will or may not be celebrating those first 5 folks into that 50 number that we hope to grow. Edgar, to think about that 50 number, when we did the research in late 2018, about 2019, we learned that there were only 261 Latinx educators in Kansas City Metro, right? And so to add on 50 is what percent of an increase?
Um, that's a great question. I don't know if I have that number right in front of me.
I mean, think about it, right? 261, you're adding on 50, like that's a big increase. So
I'm so glad you taught 6th grade math because that, actually, when I think about it, it is a significant number when you understand that there are only, and I think that actually was a 2021 report that we released,
You're right.
Teacher diversity landscape analysis that
Yep.
we did,
Mhm.
in that we did find 261 of teachers and were Latinx, right?
Yeah.
And in the greater Kansas City metro area, so that includes many districts, many communities, and so. Which is radical. It's a really interesting number because we also know that there are roughly 52,000 Latinx students in the greater Kansas City metro area, and so there's a huge disparity there when it comes to teacher representation. And we also know how valuable teacher representation is, not just to Latinx students but to all students.
Yeah.
But I'm excited to learn more about July 18th. I'm glad that is a surprise, maybe not a surprise, but that's how we do. That is how we do our annual report work. I'm gonna
Yeah.
transition our
Yeah.
next slide, which is an important number for us: $86,722. That is the number of dollars that we spent within Latinx-owned businesses over the last in 2022. I think something that is really important to our team and to our organization is that we are reinvesting dollars that we receive through funding and through philanthropy and through individual donor support back into our community. And so we are really thoughtful when it comes to finding Latinx vendors, Latinx caterers, Latinx coaches. And I think that that's a really, really cool thing that we're able to do in support of our community is put some dollars to work back into our community. And that's something that I think I'm really proud of. I know our team is really proud of. Susanna, any comments on that?
Yeah, I think thinking about why we do our mission is to increase Latinx educators in K through 12, but really thinking about the impact that that has on community, the impact that that has on the student trajectory, right? You talked about the research there is that students who have teachers who look like them are more likely to graduate high school. That's a whole family impact there, and to be able to have the privilege to do that in more than one way, being from Kansas City, being a Latina who grew up here in Kansas City, we know that there are lots of entrepreneurs and hard workers who are Latinx here in Kansas City. And so the fact that I can be a part of an organization and we are have the privilege to be a part of an organization that can also be supportive of the whole family, those parents who are entrepreneurs, those aunts and uncles and grandparents who are entrepreneurs, is really special to me, right? And it's our way of being able to honor those folks, though our mission, of course, is aligned in this way and we're focusing on Latinx educators, to be able to also honor folks in the ways that we have the privileges of doing so is really special to me.
Yeah, I think it's a great privilege to be able to do that, and a humbling thing to be able to do that, right? To serve our
Yeah.
community and really put dollars where our investments are, right? I think that's a
Yeah.
really cool thing that we can do.
Yeah.
And then finally, one of the last slides that we'll share, of course, that there's more highlights in our 2022 annual report, and you'll see the link scrolling, and maybe we'll put those in the comments as well. But this is actually one of my favorite pages and images in the annual report because it is directly from our Latinx educator community, right? So as part of our work, we survey our participants, we survey our Latinx educator community, and we're consistently asking them, what is it going to take to keep you in the profession, right? And so these are some recommendations that we've seen or that we've heard or we see from our community of Latinx educators. And this is what they're talking about, right? For example, the first is that we need to see more Latino administrators in schools. I think that makes a huge difference, right? Somebody who is leading, who understands the community, who understands the culture, who has that lens and frame of reference, that can be so critical in the retention of other Latinx educators and educators in general.
Mhm.
Susana, what's one of your takeaways from these recommendations?
Yeah, I think, of course, something that comes up quite often as I'm talking to educators on whether or not they're deciding to leave the classroom, unfortunately, is pay, right? And so, of course, number five, unfortunately, is still ensure fair compensation. But the reason I point that one out is because it's something that has been an issue for so long. I know that there are some initiatives on state levels and on federal level to make some changes to that. But I also get really excited knowing that we have our affiliate organization, Revolución Educativa, who we can relay some of this information to and say, hey, how do we collaborate on, supporting educators in this way? Because it's one thing to recruit educators and recruit teachers. It's a whole nother thing to retain them. So fair compensation, Edgar, definitely sticks out to me. And then, of course, sorry, you want to jump
No,
in
I
on
was
that
going to
one?
say
Oh, yeah.
absolutely. I think teachers need to be paid what they're worth, right? And I
Yeah.
think one thing that I think people remember from the pandemic when kids came home and they had to learn from home was the incredible value of educators, right? There's so much that uh, there's so many things that and enrich. Well, let me say this: there are so many things that educators do to enrich the lives of our students, right? And I
Yeah.
think that that's so critical, that we as a community um, think about how we're compensating educators and think about how they are underpaid
Mhm.
for what they do, right? It's
Yeah.
like the powerful work that they do is underappreciated sometimes,
Yeah.
and so we got to figure out what we need to do as a community to make sure that we're rectifying that situation long term.
Yeah, I mean, the last kind of little bit on that for me is that the average teacher leaves the classroom after just 5 years. And if you think about, the average teacher, let's say, goes into the classroom 22, 23, 5 years down the road, you're now maybe thinking about starting a family, or you're thinking about traveling some more, right? And you're starting to make some shifts and some changes. And so, you know, it's kind of no wonder that maybe pay is having some impact on that 5 year number. So yes, definitely. I think that one stuck out to me for sure. I, being a former teacher, know the impact financially that can have on families, and so yeah.
And so we encourage you to check out our annual report, our 2022 annual report on our website, latinxedco.org. You will see a link right there to check out the 2022 report. You can also follow the link that will be in our comments. You could also take a look at the link that is scrolling at the moment. But we really appreciate your continued support. We are so proud to be able to do this work, and we are so proud to be able to invest in our community of educators and ensure that they're having incredible experiences. Please connect with us. Continue to follow us on socials at Latinx EdCo. I want to thank my colleague Susana for. We've been doing this work how many years now, Susana?
No, for real. I started out when I was still teaching in late
Yeah.
2019, so almost 4 years now.
And now we have an incredible team of dynamic people who are
Yeah.
so committed to this mission. And so we just really want to thank you for your support this year. We look forward to continuing to work with you and elevating the voices of Latinx educators in our community. So thank you for joining us today. Thank you, LEC community. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your evening.
Thank you, everyone.